Never outshine the master. From Nicolas Fouquet to Steve Jobs. In the opulent court of 17th century France, Nicolas Fouquet, the powerful and charismatic finance minister of King Louis XIV, was at the height of his influence. A man of immense wealth and sophistication, Fouquet had dedicated years to strengthening the kingdom's economy and amassing personal fortunes. He was known for his intelligence, charm, and ability to navigate the political landscape with finesse. But in 1661, he made a fatal mistake, one that would cost him everything. Fouquet organized a grand celebration at his newly built chateau, Vaux-le-Vicomte, a palace so magnificent that it rivaled even the king's own residence. The finest poets, musicians, and artists of France gathered to honor the minister, and the night was filled with unparalleled luxury. Lavish feasts, stunning firework displays, and performances from the greatest talents of the time made it a night to remember. Fouquet had intended to impress the court, to showcase his wealth and influence. But there was one guest he should have been more cautious about: King Louis XIV himself. As the young king witnessed the sheer splendor of the event, he did not feel admiration or gratitude. He felt humiliation. How could a mere servant, a minister, host a more magnificent gathering than the ruler of France? How could a subordinate possess greater wealth, greater sophistication, greater charm than the one who sat on the throne? And what does it say about power when the very people meant to serve you challenge your authority so openly? To Louis XIV, this was not just a display of success, it was an act of defiance, a challenge to his supremacy. A few days later, Fouquet was arrested on charges of embezzlement. Some historians argue that the accusations were exaggerated, but the real reason for his fall was not financial misconduct. It was the fact that he had outshone the master. Fouquet spent the rest of his life in prison, a cautionary tale for all who aspire to power. This is where Robert Greene's first law of power comes into play: never outshine the master. The moment Fouquet made his brilliance too apparent, he unintentionally threatened the king's sense of authority, which led to his downfall. This story reveals a fundamental truth about human nature: those in power do not tolerate being overshadowed. It is not always the most competent, the most intelligent, or the most hardworking who succeed. It is those who understand the psychology of power. Power is not just about strength or skill, it is about perception. The moment a superior feels threatened, admiration turns into resentment. This idea has been explored by great thinkers throughout history. Niccolo Machiavelli in The Prince warned that rulers must always be wary of those who are too capable, too ambitious, too charismatic. He argued that a prince must know how to eliminate threats before they grow too powerful. To Machiavelli, power is not something that is simply possessed. It must be constantly maintained, often through manipulation, deception, and when necessary, destruction of rivals. Friedrich Nietzsche, in his concept of will to power, described how human ambition drives individuals to dominate others. Those in power, according to Nietzsche, do not want to be challenged. They want to remain at the top, and they will go to great lengths to suppress anyone who threatens their position. Even if a superior appears confident and secure, beneath the surface there is often fear. Fear of being replaced, of being outdone, of being forgotten. Jean-Jacques Rousseau, on the other hand, examined the fragility of social hierarchies. He argued that people in power are often aware, even if only subconsciously, that their position is based on perception rather than true superiority. A king is only a king because others agree to see him as one. A CEO is only powerful because employees obey him. When someone lower in the hierarchy shows too much excellence, it reminds those at the top that their position is not invincible. This breeds insecurity, and insecurity breeds retaliation. But what does this mean for us? Does it mean we should suppress our talents, hold ourselves back, pretend to be less than we are just to avoid making others uncomfortable? Not necessarily. The key is strategy. Instead of openly displaying superiority, the wise individual learns the art of subtlety. The most successful people in history have understood when to shine and when to step back. They have mastered the ability to make their superiors feel secure, even while secretly advancing their own ambitions. It is not deception, it is survival. Consider Steve Jobs, a brilliant and visionary entrepreneur. In his early years at Apple, His talent and strong personality were undeniable, but they also created tension. Jobs was known for his intense drive, demanding perfection from everyone around him. His vision for Apple was grand, and he believed in pushing boundaries, even if it meant clashing with others. This confidence and ambition, however, made many people uncomfortable, including those within his own company. He was eventually ousted from Apple, the very company he helped create. His departure was a direct consequence of his overwhelming personality, which outshone those around him, including his fellow leaders at Apple. But Jobs' story did not end there. Years later, he returned to Apple, and this time, he brought with him not only wisdom gained from his failures, but also a much more refined approach to leadership. He had learned how to channel his brilliance without alienating those around him. Jobs embraced a more diplomatic approach, working with his team to foster collaboration rather than friction. He understood that true influence does not come from brute force. It comes from knowing when to step forward and when to let others take the spotlight. By the time he returned, the company was on the brink of collapse, and yet under his leadership, Apple transformed into one of the most valuable companies in the world. The lesson here is clear. The path to true influence is not always through direct confrontation, but through careful maneuvering. Jobs' success came not only from his vision, but from his ability to work within the system and understand the psychological dynamics of power. He had mastered the art of balancing ambition with humility. He knew when to be the visionary and when to step back and let others shine. In everyday life, this principle applies to the workplace, social circles, and even family dynamics. Understanding the psychology of power allows us to navigate these situations wisely. Sometimes, the best move is to let others take credit, to make them feel important, to avoid unnecessary competition until the right moment. So what do you think? Have you ever worked under a boss who seemed threatened by your success? A teacher who didn't appreciate a student knowing more than them? A colleague who sabotaged you out of jealousy? Let us know your thoughts in the comments. If you're not subscribing to the Yusufi channel, you're probably never going to see us again. But if you are, then congratulations, you're growing every day.